Greetings and salutations, folks. I recently found myself with copious amounts of binge time while doing a drastically underestimated amount of hand sewing for a project. Anyway, as I was shoving my approximately 10,000th cable tie into its boning channel, I stumbled across this beauty. That is Season 1, Episode 10 of Our Flag Means Death, wherein the character Blackbeard hums himself some country music icon, Orville Peck. How the walls of the Our Flag Means Death fandom did not implode with this gem of an Easter egg, I don't know, but at least one other person noticed it, because there is a Twitter thread out there. So this was not a delusion of my stays-addled brain. This crossover did happen. I mean, obviously I need an Orville Peck-inspired mask to go with my circa 1600 Our Flag Means Death robe, obviously. It's actually not that off base historically. Masks and masquerades were super popular in the 16th and 17th centuries. Pretty much throughout history, in fact. Many modern mask types are direct ancestors of carnival masks, many of which are based on 17th century comedy dell'arte characters. Honestly, there are so many different kinds of carnival masks, but I'm particularly interested in the Bauta mask. This was a full face mask that was intended to obscure the identity of the wearer while giving them access to the lower half of the face to eat, drink, or sing in public while maintaining anonymity. You get it. They get it. So I've never actually made a masquerade mask before, but I decided a good place to start was by making a pattern. 100% there's a better way to do this, but I decided to clip some scrap fabric to my hair and blindly drape the fabric into the shape of my face using sewing clips. While I'm realizing what an absurd idea that is, let's take a look at Orville's mask. His masks are almost always leather or some type of leather substitute, with usually contrasting fringe along the bottom half. There are photos that show the bottom sort of folded upwards, so his masks may sometimes be full-face masks. Orville does wear molded leather occasionally, but his masks are usually seamed in the middle, and they have a specific upturned eye shape. I traced the drape's shape onto paper and refined some of the lines. Because my fabric was much bulkier than his, I made mine just a simple half-face mask. Okay, so I made this, and it's kind of ridiculous to like hold it up and try to talk, but it actually works out really well. The eyes are a little bit too small, so I'm just going to widen them by about 1/4 of an inch. I'm not really sure that I'm going to be able to get this much definition from the velvet, so I may have to figure out some other way to get this sort of shape in there. We'll figure it out. But the rest of it, the shaping actually works quite well. I'm probably going to do a little bit more down here, so I'll maybe actually lower this by about 1/2 inch. The way that Orville Peck's fringe runs, it kind of runs like directly across the bottom of his nose, so I wouldn't have that much space to attach the fringe. I don't want to be like basically dangling the fringe from the bottom of the mask. I think that wouldn't be very secure. So I think just putting it over the top, kind of like a trim, will be better. Kind of can't believe that this technique worked. I don't think that this is the best technique to be making a mask with, but hey, it's effective. I made the changes and added seam allowance to the whole thing. I made the mask using similar techniques to the gown. I first cut a piece of linen canvas. Since I added seam allowance to the pattern, this meant I needed to subtract the seam allowance from the canvas layer. These were the only scraps I had left from the robe, so I had to be creative with my grain line to get the pieces to fit and make sure the motif on the front was intentional looking. I basted the canvas to the wrong side of the self, then turned the seam allowance of the self over the canvas and fell stitched it down using linen thread. I used silk taffeta to line the robe, but I lined the mask in cotton pointel jersey. That was actually my daughter's old onesie. Waste not, folks. I basted the lining over the canvas, turned the seam allowance of the lining inwards, and fell stitched it along the inner edge of the turned velvet using pink cotton thread. The robe has an actual ton of silver trim on it, so I decided that was how I'd get a more defined eye shape on the mask. I wanted a shape that was definitely referential to Orville's, but also had some Venetian carnival flair to it. I couched 2 rows of silver cord to the exaggerated eye shape around the actual eye hole. The fringe on Orville's masks varies just a bit. Sometimes it's long, sometimes shorter, sometimes it stops shy of the mask edge to show the jawline. Generally, the Orville fringe looks to be more chainette fringe, or the lustrous viscose fringe that's probably the most common form of fringe these days. In case anyone else out there is pondering a Peck mask, I'd recommend sewing on some chainette fringe and calling it a day. I didn't have any, but I did have a fair amount of knit viscose cord, and I kind of dug the chunkier fringe. I cut 26-inch pieces. That's a 13-inch long piece doubled. To keep the knit cord from unraveling, I unraveled just a bit, threaded the yarn through a needle, and looped back through all the loose stitches. I stitched the fold of each doubled piece to the inside of some silver trim. This is the trim from the shoulder wing things of the robe. I chose the jawbone revealing length of trim, and once it was complete, I stitched the trim over the right side of the mask in that just below the nose position from earlier. Each side of the mask got 2 ribbons. These will tie around the head to secure the mask to the face. Okay, obviously this was a funsies project, and I did have a lot of fun doing it. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. If so, I always appreciate a thumbs up, and of course, hit the subscribe button to join me in more historical frivolities. I've got a pretty involved project I've been cooking up, and the first video for that should drop in about a week or so. Bye!